Back in 1995, Ferrari had a problem. How could they follow the extreme and extremely wonderful F40? The answer was this, the F50, a road-going Ferrari with the V12 engine from a Formula One car bolted in the back. Except as it turned out, it didn't feel bolted in the back. It felt bolted to your back. As a result, the abiding memory for anyone who drove an F50 wasn't the ferocious acceleration or the 200-mile-an-hour top speed. It was the sense that you'd had a furiously spinning washing machine full of bricks hammering directly into your most sensitive pain receptors. Add in the fact that it liked to bite back in the corners, and what you've got here is actually the recipe for 4.7 litres of total misery. It was a very bad car, and it was ugly. Still, at least it made them try harder with the ENZO. In Italy, you don't take the name of the father in vain. So when Ferrari decided to call this car the ENZO, you knew they had something special in mind. Something that would take supercars onto another level of speed, of handling, of fury. Such fury that after 3 full-bore standing starts, you have to send the car back to Italy for a new clutch. The Ferrari ENZO marked the point at which supercars became like modern fighter jets, demanding complicated electronics to keep them under control. It's computers that keep its 6-litre, 660 brake horsepower V12 and flappy paddle gearshift on speaking terms, and its F1-style adjustable suspension on an even footing. The result is a car that's faster around Ferrari's test track than all but their most recent Formula One cars. The ENZO's V12 went on to even greater things in the insane FXX and the psychotic 599 GTO, both cars that need even more men with laptops to keep them under control. But for Ferrari, the ENZO was Genesis. They only made 399 of them, and then the factory built a 400th for a very particular customer, the Pope. That's how special you have to be to have one. You might think Ferraris should be mid-engined, and this one isn't. You might think Ferraris should have V12s, and this one doesn't. It's called the California, and you have to ask, what's the point of it? Certainly, it's not very pretty, and it has literally the worst built-in telephone of any car in the world. Unless, of course, you've always wanted to spend your life accidentally phoning everyone you know whose name starts with A. But on the plus side, it's got a folding metal roof, it's reasonably nice to drive, and it means Ferrari can take money from people who might previously have bought a Mercedes SL, which means they can afford to develop proper, wonderful supercars like the 458. So, you see, the California does have a point after all. This is only the third Ferrari in history to be called a GTO. The first, the 1962 250 GTO, remains the world's most valuable and quite possibly the world's most beautiful car. But its form came from its main function, as a racer. Likewise, GTO number 2, the 288 of the 1980s, was also made to go racing, only for the rules to change at the last minute, leaving it with nowhere to race. And now we have this, the third GTO, a slightly softened road-going version of the 599 FXX. It has 670 horsepower and a sense that it's constantly plotting new and exciting ways to physically harm you. But that's not the only reason why I don't much care for this car. The real reason I'm no fan is because the O in GTO means homologation. It means racing. And this 599 will never race, nor was it ever intended to. In essence then, it's just a lightened, pumped-up version of the car a successful plastic surgeon would drive. This is the very latest mid-engined V8 Ferrari, the 458 Italia. Pretty, isn't it? And that's not something you can say about many of their efforts from the last few years. The 430 had a front end like a leering idiot. The 348 looked like it had crashed into a Venetian blind showroom. But this looks just right. Its appearance isn't just for show either. Those black fins in the front grille flex under air pressure, so the faster you go, the more they bend out of the way to improve aerodynamics. And there are no engine intakes to spoil the sides because they've been moved underneath the car. So it looks fantastic, and its 4.5-litre, 562 horsepower V8 means it has the guts to punch you repeatedly in the back of the head. But that alone wouldn't be enough. Some of its ancestors have been as incompetent and terrifying as having brain surgery performed by a baboon. As it turns out, the 458 is better than that. Much better. In fact, it's a sharp-handling, smooth-riding, savagely fast masterpiece. Of course, it's not perfect. For some reason, they've put far too many buttons on the steering wheel. The dashboard screens are so complicated they can only be worked by Bill Gates, and personally, I'd still rather have the brutal Mercedes SLS. But I can't deny that the 458 is a great car and a proper Ferrari. If you wanted to win at Le Mans at the end of the 1950s, you needed to be driving one of these. The Ferrari 250 Testarossa wasn't just beautiful, it was frighteningly effective. It dominated the 24-hour race in 1958 and again in 1960. And then, just for good measure, when the opposition thought it could breathe again, it won again in 1961. Its close cousin, the 250 GTO, might be the most valuable car the world has ever seen, but the Testarossa was the one that took the silverware. For all its beauty, the GTO had to make do with class wins, where the Testarossa beat everything. Its name comes from the red paint the engine builders daubed all over its cylinder head, because, well, that's the only colour paint they have at Ferrari. Testarossa means red head. And sure enough, its 3-litre V12 engine, made by old men in oily workshops with lathes and drills and unfortunate industrial injuries, had a volcanic nature, There is sweat and blood and a bad attitude in every Ferrari 250 Testarossa. The Koenigsegg CCX holds a special place in Top Gear history. For a long time, it was the fastest car around our track. To this day, it has the longest name of any car on our lap board. And it's the only car the Stig has ever stuffed. Stig's accident wasn't small, but then it wouldn't be with a 900 horsepower, twin supercharged, 4.5-litre V8 pushing him towards the tyre wall. But in a straight line, that power also means speed. 245 miles an hour to be exact, and that's not far off what a Veyron can do. Except, of course, a Veyron has a huge wing on it as standard, and a Koenigsegg, as Stig found out, does not. Or at least it didn't until Stiggy's accident, after which it became an option for any owner who didn't fancy ruining the inside of their underpants. Even someone as fast and as brave as Stig would be wise to choose it. There's a famous scene from the first Gulf War when a convoy of Humvees enters a minefield. One of them hits a mine, gets blown clean in the air, lands on all four wheels, and continues on. That is not possible in a Land Rover. It was at this moment that the Hummer legend was born. And someone quickly figured out that there were enough crazed gym enthusiasts in California to justify making the Humvee available to non-military types. Fitting the Humvee into civvies meant replacing the 6.5-litre Detroit diesel engine with a 6.6-litre GM Duramax. And since this engine made just 300 horsepower in a car that weighs more than most houses, it was often quicker to walk to the shops than use the Hummer. Still, if between you and the shops was a 22-inch obstacle to be cleared, or a puddle 30 inches deep, or a minefield, the Hummer H1 was the car for you. These turned out to be obstacles that most people don't face, and as a result, the H1 Alpha was discontinued after just over a year.